Welcome and Happy New Year. It's 2026. I cannot believe that we are here already. Amazing. 2025 flew by, but here we are, a brand new, fresh calendar to start off with. And I started thinking about things, and it reminded me that this podcast started off as reality TV, pop culture, food and travel, but it's slowly become something else. You know, through the course of the year, I realized that the podcast was, without any effort on my part, slowly evolving into something that was not just your basic recap podcast anymore. And so rather than fight it, I just kind of decided to go along with it. What's really happening is I think that the podcast has become more about really living alongside of me, what I'm noticing, what I'm questioning, enjoying, what I'm letting go of because it no longer serves me. And if you listened to yesterday's podcast, then you know that I shared kind of what stopped working for me as a viewer. But today is more personal, and we're going to talk a little bit more about the personal side of things. Yesterday, we talked about reality TV fatigue, in particular, my disillusionment with Real Housewives of Potomac, and how I felt disappointed by season 19 of the Real Housewives of Orange County, and how I really thought that the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills production fell short in 2025 and why. And I did make one, production error that I should go back and correct. I think I said Shed Media needed to do better. And Beverly Hills is actually produced by Evolution Media. I know it's all Alex Baskin, but I just want to make sure that I made that distinction. And if you want to know why I think production fell short, go back and listen. Today's episode is going to be a little bit different. Today, we're going to be talking about things like what I really started paying attention to, where I chose to be, the relationships, who I chose to share my time with, and then my curiosity and the growth and expansion and what comes next for me in 2026. So let's get started, and let's start off with what I really started paying attention to in 2025. It was a very eye-opening year for me with regards to my own personal being, and I want to cover a few of the areas that impacted me both directly and indirectly, and I'll start with something that was just all over everywhere. And in 2024 and in 2025, I became a consumer of GLP-1s. I've talked about it a little bit on this podcast, and I'm not going to spend a ton of time on it. But what I will say is that for me, they worked. I was able to lose 32 pounds, I believe. And what was interesting to me was the day my doctor called me into the office to tell me that I had, in fact, reached my ideal BMI and no longer qualified for the GLP-1s, so that I had just received my last dose. And since I had made some changes and I had lost some weight and I was going to the gym relatively regularly, then there would be really no need for the GLP-1s. And to be honest with you, I was ready to be done. I had kind of titrated myself down, and I had had a surgery, so I had to go off them anyway. And I decided I'm just not going to go back on them. And between recovering from my surgery and going off of the GLP-1s, starting hormones, working out and walking a little bit more, adding creatine to my supplement regimen, I found, and then of course, weeks in Europe and the holidays, I find that I am up 5 to 7 pounds depending on the day. And that's having been off of GLP-1s for about 3 months. So for me, I decided that I am going to get back on track with my health and wellness, starting this week. And in accordance with that, I am going to start a low dose of GLP-1s again and see if it helps me quiet the food noise. Because one of the things that I realized was that I was literally trying to silence the noise, the screaming in my head telling me, go get one of the Christmas cookies. Hey, don't forget, somebody bought you 3 jars of almond roca for Christmas. You should have a few of those. Oh, don't worry. Take the little package that you got. It's fully sustainable, 100% natural cacao that they're made of. So how could those be bad for you? And before you know it, I essentially had undone a lot of the work that it took me the better part of 2025 to accomplish. In a matter of weeks, I unraveled. And to be honest, I was back with headaches, aches and pains, waking up in the middle of the night with joints hurting me and unable to stay in bed because my body was aching and my back hurt. And oh, by the way, stomach issues again, all of the things that you don't notice they're gone until they're back. And so you don't really know that you're feeling better and doing better and that your body is happier and responding better to you until you realize it's not. And for me, one of the biggest moments, kind of aha moment for me, was earlier this week and then again yesterday when I had soy. I love sushi. I love soy sauce. And even though I have replaced it with, coconut aminos, I still like the different taste of soy sauce. So when I have sushi, I just go for it. When I tell you the joint pain associated within 12 to 24 hours of having this soy, and it lasts a good 12 to 24 hours. It's just discomfort, it's swelling, it's just not cool. And at the end of the day, it's not worth it. So am I being honest with myself and saying that I'm never going to have soy sauce again? Probably not. But I'll tell you what I did learn over the last week. I am going to be hyper aware of the moments that I choose to do that, because now I know that therein lies the problem. So when we know better, we do better, right? And this is why I have decided that I am going to move back to the GLP-1s and try them for probably about 90 days just to get myself back on track. And I'll keep you posted and I'll let you know how we're going and whether I stay on or off, or if I am having success, or whether or not it is the right choice for me. What I do know is they were covered by my insurance before, and they will no longer be covered in 2026. So this will be an out-of-pocket expense. And sometimes just that in and of itself is incentive enough to take things seriously. At least for me, I remember back in, maybe 2015, I did a transformation boot camp 45-day challenge, and I had to put $500 down. And when I tell you that even that last day, I was there trying to, pedal off my last, it was like 8 ounces in order to make my weight so I could get my $500 back. When you tell me I'm going to lose money, it means something to me. So maybe in a silly sort of psychological way, I will do better because it's coming out of my own pocket. I don't know, but I'll tell you when I get there. And one of the other discoveries that I had in 2025, and we've touched a little bit about, how soy affected me, but I realized, and I've talked a little bit about it on the podcast with one of my friends, but seed oils are so bad for us. And why are they bad for us? Well, first of all, they're really highly processed. And when they're heated, they become very unstable. And then on top of that, they're very high in omega-6 fats. And they tend to cause inflammation and discomfort because we get way more of it than we think we're getting because it's in everything. So just if you don't believe me, start reading labels. If you do nothing else, just start reading labels. And what are the bad oils? Okay, canola, soybean, corn, cottonseed, sunflower, safflower, and then what do we do instead of that? So for me, I made one vast change, and that was getting rid of canola and swapping in avocado. But I primarily use olive oil anyway already. So it wasn't a huge pivot for me. A little harder for my husband because he does not necessarily like the taste of like butter and eggs. He was used to his canola oil. So the shift to avocado has been a little bit rough for him. But stick with avocado oil, olive oil, butter. We discovered ghee and really have taken to using it in anything that we used to just use like a neutral oil, as long as we're not worried about a really heavy butter taste. And then there's coconut oil, which is also good. And then beef tallow and even lard. These are way better for you than the processed seed oils. And so for me, I made that change this year, and it really felt noticeable because over the holidays, a lot of the cooking contained seed oils, and a lot of the restaurants that I frequented cooked with, regular seed oils. And again, halfway through December, I started aching and having joint pain again, and struggling with my muscles and headaches. So for me, it's real. The change was real. One of the things that I really wanted to focus on in 2025 was getting off of medications and instead trying to fill my body with the supplements that I need as we get a little older. And honestly, the list is endless and overwhelming and daunting, and I'm not going to bore you with all of the options out there. But what I will tell you is the supplements that I am taking have in fact helped me. So I'll spend a few minutes talking about them. So here's what I take on the daily. I take collagen, mushroom coffee, and creatine in my coffee in the morning. And then I take a shot of dose, which is milk thistle, and it's that liver cleanse stuff. And then a dropper of B12, B6, and B1 with niacin and folate. And I take a supplement containing vitamin D, K, and calcium in tablet form. Why? Well, I'm not trying to biohack my body. I'm just kind of trying to support it. So let's talk about collagen. Collagen has been very helpful for me with my issues with osteoporosis. Collagen supports joints, skin, and connective tissue, and it's things that we all naturally lose as we age. Why mushroom coffee? Well, my friend recommended it. I don't drink a lot of coffee because it makes me jittery. So I add it to my morning coffee. And then if I ever want to, it kind of just gives me that extra boost. And if I ever want to have a second cup of coffee, instead, I'll just froth up some warm water with some mushroom coffee. It does give you a steadier, less jittery energy boost than regular coffee. And then my creatine, everybody thinks it's just to build muscles, and it's not. It supports strength, mental energy, especially as we get older. It helps with clarity, and it does juice up your muscles a little bit. So you may notice a tiny little bit of weight gain, but your muscles will thank you because they're hydrated and they're happy. The dose shot is kind of more about daily nutrients. It's kind of a reset button, and it's no secret I enjoy my vodka sodas, so my liver likes it. And then I most recently started doing a B12, B6, B1, and it just happens to have niacin and folate in it. And I did it in dropper form so I could do it sublingually in the morning. And the reason I started taking it was because I was feeling kind of draggy, and I wasn't sure if it was because I had stopped taking the GLP-1 or because I was not able to exercise as much as I was because I was recovering. For whatever reason, I really started to have an afternoon crash, and I decided that I would add this to my regimen, and I haven't noticed a huge change, but I will tell you it did help me get through the pre-Christmas gift wrapping tamale making rush that I had to go through. So I'm not mad at it. And then the vitamin D, K, and calcium that I take is in tablet form. And honestly, it's just bone and immune support. For me, I'm indoors a lot. My hormones have begun to shift. And with the osteoporosis, I've been told to take a really high quality calcium supplement because I don't want to take a medication. And so the good news is that in the beginning of 2025, I was on, I believe maybe 5 or 6 medications. And as we enter 2026, I am on a half a blood pressure medication, which the doctor expects I could be off of hopefully by the end of January. I am only on one other medication, and that is Prilosec for my stomach issues, which I suspect if I go back to the clean eating and all of the things I was doing earlier in 2025, I probably will have no need for that either. So fingers crossed, 2026 may be the year that I get to be medication free, but I'll keep you posted on that too. And so for me, 2025 just made me more curious about what I let into my body, my home, my mind. And honestly, none of this is about fixing something that was broken. It's about giving my body what it needs so I can feel steady and strong instead of depleted. This is just what works for me. I didn't start everything at once, and I pay attention to how my body responds. So the other thing that was a discovery for me in 2025 was plastics and why they're not good for us anymore. Why? Well, plastics contain phthalates, BPAs, PFAs, and other bad chemicals that are known endocrine disruptors. And for me, that's important because my body's already fighting all of these issues with pain and inflammation. And anytime your endocrine system becomes disrupted, that's not going to help in that area. And so plastic isn't bad on its face, but with time and heat exposure and scratches and repetitive use, it tends to release these chemicals, and it causes things for us that aren't helpful. And so instead in 2025, I still haven't even completed this shift because it's a slow shift, but I switched from plastic to glass wherever possible. And instead of using plastic lids or plastic baggies, I've switched to silicone. And so there's been a little bit of questioning when I've talked to my friends about this, and they've said, well, silicone could be bad too. And maybe we will find out in years it is. But again, when you know better, you do better. And for now, this is the better option. Why? Because silicone is made from sand, not petroleum like plastic. And it doesn't break down with heat. So it's safer for like cooking, baking, dishwashers, your hot foods. It does not contain BPAs or phthalates or hormone disrupting additives as long as you're getting food grade silicone. And it's very durable. So you're not going to have those cracks with the microplastics that are, seeping out into your food. And so little by little, I am making the switch. And honestly, aside from having to buy a little rack that cost me like $8 to hang my silicone baggies on so that they would dry upside down, I haven't had to make many more changes. It's really kind of a cool change that I'm really happy with. So what else did I change? Oh, candles. Okay, I have a scent. If you know me, you know I have a signature scent that I love. I give people this candle all the time. So imagine how bummed I was when I realized that the 3 or 4 candles that I'm burning almost daily in my home were not good. Why? Well, they release soot and particulate matter, and fragrances release VOCs. All of these things are really bad for us. So it's not bad if you're doing it once in a while. But in my case, I almost always have a candle burning in my home, and it's a 3-wick candle almost always, and almost always in more than one room. And I even have a system by which I would freeze my, when the candle gets to the bottom and it won't light anymore, I would take the container, throw it in the freezer, and that would shrink the wax so I could pop it out, and I would save all of those, and I would use that in my candle melter. Well, I was onto something, you guys, because it turns out that the way around this is to switch to candle lamps. And I got one right before Christmas, and I was so excited about it that I asked my husband to buy me another one for Christmas so I can put one in my room. And now we have 3 candles going, but we're not burning wicks, and we are not releasing these disruptors into my environment. We're not releasing the soot or the particulate matter. And even though the light is beaming down on the candle and releasing the fragrance, because the burn point is lower, it's not releasing those VOCs into the air. And so we got to be careful, because even clean wax can burn dirty if you have the wrong wick that contains metal. And one of the ways to tell is if you have little soot or a little cloudy film around where you burn your candle, then it's probably not the best thing for your environment. And you may want to invest in one of these little candle lamps. I love mine. It makes the candles last longer, actually. And I think that it was like $20 at Costco. And speaking of perfumes and dyes, one of the big changes that I made in 2025 was when I discovered all of the perfumes and dyes and phthalates and other cancer-causing irritants and chemicals that were in my laundry detergent, those wonderful little beads you throw in your laundry that aren't so wonderful after all, and my dryer sheets. And so I made a couple of simple changes. First, I spent a small fortune buying these dissolvable sheets that you rip in half. You know the company if you use them. They're good enough. They're just incredibly expensive. And I wanted to make sure that I had something that was fragrance free and good for the environment and didn't contain any chemicals. And I may still continue to use those from time to time because my alternative has added water, and of course it comes in plastic. The alternative I'm talking about is all free and clear. So that's my hot tip for this podcast. If you're looking to get away from the fragrances and the dyes in your detergent, all free and clear is an affordable option that is, pretty readily available at grocery stores and on Amazon and stuff like that. And it's not nearly as expensive as the dissolvable sheets that I bought. But I'll tell you one thing, those dissolvable sheets are amazing if you're going on vacation. Like when we went on our cruise, those would have been perfect to bring along because they would have all fit in one little tiny area in the suitcase and would have provided laundry detergent for the duration of the trip. So that, and then I lost the dryer sheets because my biggest concern was static. But I discovered wool dryer balls, and for, $10, I solved my problem. So I'm way ahead of the game. I've replaced the dryer balls once, but that is less than a fraction of what it would have cost me to buy dryer sheets all year long. So honestly, I'm happy. And My husband from time to time struggles with skin irritation, and he has not had any of those issues since the change. And I haven't either. And I was a little bit afraid that my laundry was going to become dingy or have a funky odor because I wasn't using the fragrances anymore. But so far, so good, guys. So I'm a believer, and I'm happy that I made the change. At one point in 2025, I was at somebody's house and they made one simple comment to me. They said, "I love real plants. They make me happy." And I came home and I noticed that all of the plants in my house were fake silk plants, and that's by design. I notoriously have a black thumb, and I just gave up years ago because I'm just not good at it. I don't even try to garden anymore, even though I enjoy it and I find it very grounding. Who knows, maybe 2026 will change that. But up until last year, I didn't really dabble much in the green thumb art. But that sentence stuck with me, and I started looking at my plants and realizing that they didn't bring any added value. They just filled a space, and everybody can tell they're fake, and it just gave me something else to dust. And I decided, you know what? I'm going to make a conscious effort to buy one new plant at least once a month and slowly convert my house to real life plants versus fake ones. And so I did. Once a month, I started buying a real plant, and I think I have 1, 2, 3, 4 of them. So it must have happened about 4 months ago that I had this revelation. But what followed was these make me feel so much happier. They give me something to do, something to tend to. And so I did a little bit of research. And of course, we all know that real plants in your home are better than fake ones. But why? Well, one of the obvious reasons is fake ones are normally made of silk and or plastic. And we just had a whole conversation about plastics. So enough said. But they're also just there. Whereas real plants absorb CO2. They increase the humidity in any given room. And they are known to reduce stress. And because they are living and they require attention and care, they're known to elevate your mood. And this is exactly what I discovered happened to me. I found myself checking my soil and making sure my plants weren't thirsty. And then a couple of weeks ago, we had to move, it was last month, we had to move one of the plants in order to put this little Christmas town that we put out every year. And we had to move the location of one of my plants, and it was not happy. Last week, I had to do like a little mini intervention and prune it and check it and relocate it. And it made me realize that I just like caring for things. And this gave me something to care for, and they look way prettier in my home. So I think I'm going to continue that. And it was just something that made me happy in 2025, and I wanted to share it with you. And hey, by the way, bonus, it kind of fell right in line with what I was already doing. So it was kind of magical. Then I decided, all of this is kind of making me realize that I was naturally heading down a road of, hey, I think I'm into health and wellness. Hey, I think I'm starting to make more conscious decisions about what I'm putting into my body, what I'm eating, what I'm doing. And so I, of course, intend to continue my health and wellness journey in 2026, and I hope to do it with Jen. We're supposed to be talking really soon, so there'll be more of that to come in 2026, and I hope you'll be there to share it with me. Then one of the things that really caught me off guard was I had been, I listen to podcasts here and there, and I love audiobooks, but in my effort to cut down my recurring expenses, I got rid of Audible in 2024, right at the end. So I didn't have it in 2025. And then you may remember I mentioned it on the podcast that I think it was like Black Friday. They had like a 99-cent sale for 3 months. And their featured book was The Let Them Theory. So I said, you know what? I've heard a lot about this, but I don't really know what the heck it is. So I'm going to go ahead and download this, and I'll have Audible, and it'll give me access to my library again. And I'll keep it for, the 3 months that it cost me 99 cents. And so that's what I did. And I downloaded the book. And imagine my surprise. So I read this book, and first of all, let me just tell you what the let them theory means. At its core, let them means stop managing other people's choices, their reactions, timelines, or misunderstandings. And as I was listening, I started to hear things more clearly and things that sounded more familiar. How by redirecting my energy and not forcing peace with people and just allowing adults to be adults and being more selective. And this was a big one. No longer feeling responsible for other people's discomforts. And so when I heard all of these things and then I reflected upon it, I realized I wasn't really adopting this theory. I had already been living it for pretty much the entirety of 2025. I just didn't really have the language for it yet. I had already stopped trying to control how people showed up in my life, and I started letting me control how I showed up in my own life. And so it was kind of a huge moment of pride because I realized I've made some pretty terrific changes last year, and that's something to take a moment to be proud about. One of the other big changes that I made in 2025 that kind of happened by accident was I went back to church. So I am born and raised a Catholic. I really was a self-motivated Catholic as a child. My parents really didn't attend church except for a small spell during my childhood. But I took myself to catechism. I selected my own godparents for my first communion and my confirmation. And then I remember when it came time to prepare for confirmation, I was the person who led up that charge as well. Of course, by then my parents were more involved in the church, so they were available to take me to classes and things like that. And so, I raised my children Catholic. Some of them it stuck, some of them it didn't. But one of my children in particular is raising his children in the Catholic faith and attends church regularly. And I was given the honor of being asked to be one of my grandson's godparents as he prepares for baptism, penance, first communion, and confirmation, which will take place this year during the Easter season. And so imagine how touched and honored I was to know that my son thought I was the best person to be the steward of faith for his son. It just meant everything to me. And of course, the proviso was, Mom, you have to go to church. And I think it was just the nudge I needed. I've always loved going to church. It's just one of those things that, for whatever reason, I did not give the importance in my life to that I should have. And that's just not okay. It doesn't mean that I'm going to beat myself up or any of those things, because for me, it happened when it needed to happen. And I will tell you, after my trip to the Vatican, it had that much more meaning. And I think some of the events of this year, like the new Pope, made a big difference for me as well. And so I'm really happy to be going back. Now, I'm not perfect. I don't go every week. I didn't go last week. And I'm going to take a minute to just throw this in. I've never wavered in my faith or my relationship with God. So that's not been the issue. And this is not a religious podcast at all in any way, shape, or form. Believe what you want to believe. I believe that everybody deserves the right to think freely and worship whoever they choose. That, however, is not my belief. I am a Catholic, born and bred, and very happy to say, apparently I'm a practicing Catholic again. Let's move on to the experiences and the travel that I had in 2025 and where I chose to be. So the obvious choice is our huge trip to Europe, including a 10-day cruise and visits to multiple countries. And the highlight of that trip for me was our 2 days in Rome and our one beautiful touching day at the Vatican. It, for me, was the emotional center of this trip. It made me fall in love with Rome and want to go back and explore it more. I love the people, the food. I loved everything about it. And I also want to get back to Spain because I feel like there is so much more for us to see in Spain. But if you really want to hear all the details about that, you can go back and listen to the summer series. I covered the entire vacation in a summer series over the course of several episodes. So I'm not going to get into it all over again. One of the other really notable moments for me this year was my girls' Mexico wine weekend. I met a really nice friend that I've been able to kind of grow a budding friendship with. And the trip itself was so much fun. It was relaxing. It was cathartic at some moments. It was incredibly wine-filled. And some of the culinary moments were moments I will probably remember for the rest of my life. I covered that in an earlier podcast too, if you want to listen. But that was one of the weekends that really kind of changed my perspective on just a lot of things. And it was one of those moments that I realized, you're in a different place than you were this time last year in like the best of ways. Of course, I'm still a Disneyland Magic key holder, and I did go to Disneyland several times over the course of 2025. I went with members of my family, including my daughter-in-law and my grandson. I went, and of course with, her sister-in-law and their kids, and that's always a fun time. And then I went with my cousin and my other cousin that was from Indiana and his grandkids and his daughter, and that was a fun time. That was really special because I got to see Disneyland through the eyes of a child who had never been there before. And that doesn't happen very often when you live in Southern California. And then I got to go with my son and his family to celebrate my grandson's birthday. And that was an overnighter filled with a lot of moments of excitement. And it was a good trip for my grandson. So yay. I don't know that I am going to continue my Magic Pass in 2026. I've been thinking about it, and I want to because it's still a happy place for me. But honestly, I'm going to do the math and see if I think financially it makes sense, or if I just want to earmark X amount of times per year that I'm going to go and put that amount into my Disneyland fund and no longer be a pass holder. I'll let you guys know what I decide, but that's what I've been thinking about with regards to Disneyland. I had a trip to visit my son in Arizona in 2025, and we went up to Sedona. That was one of the moments that still sticks with me. I can still remember the view in my mind's eye sitting at lunch, and that was a takeaway that I would like to repeat. So I'll probably be going back to Sedona in 2026 if I have anything to say about it. And I got to go to Pride for the first time. That was one of the things that had been on my bucket list for quite a few years. And as a bonus, I went to SUR and happened to walk in on a filming moment of the new Vanderpump Rules, season 12, I guess it is. And I have some videos that I'll share with you as we get a little bit closer to them releasing the actual episode where they filmed Pride on, the streaming networks. I'll release some of the stuff I have then, but I got to know a few of the cast members. I believe, Audrey was the hostess who sat us, and I talked to Natalie for a good long time. Got to meet pretty much all of them, and it was a fun moment. And I had another moment in 2025 where I spent a weekend in WeHo. I did a really cool crawl, and I did a series on that as well. So, when I started thinking about all of the things that I did in 2025, I realized that I stopped waiting for someday. Like, someday I'll do this and someday I'll do this. And I started saying yes to experiences. And I had a lot of wonderful experiences in 2025. So for 2026, I'm hoping for that or better. 2025 was definitely a wonderful year when it came to travel and experiences and getting out and living life. And I'm really grateful for it, especially and because of the relationships that I fostered and that I grew throughout the course of 2025. The people I met and just the joy that having moments brought me. It made me tap into a different side of myself that I kind of thought was gone for good. I had built up so many walls as a result of having been burned by bad friendships and relationships over the years. And I just thought, you know what? I'm just too old. I'm never going to find good friends. And that's just the way it is. And the last 2025 was a year that proved me wrong when it came to my friendships, because I am now able to start 2026 with a pretty solid group of friends that I love, and we enjoy spending time together. We are real and honest with one another, and I am really grateful for that. New friends that I didn't know could be such good friends just mean everything to not just me, but to my husband. It had been many years since we had felt safe enough to forge friendships with another couple, and we've done that this year. And now we have friends that we go out to dinner with all the time, so that's really cool. And one of the moments that really stood out for me in 2025 was early in the year. I attended a cooking class with my son and my grandson. It was his birthday present. I believe I mentioned it on the podcast. It was a sushi making for kids cooking class, and we had such a great time. And what I loved most about it was that my son now makes sushi. They went on a little getaway sometime during 2025, and they made sushi with, the brothers. And so now my other son makes sushi too. My grandson has exposure to making sushi. My other grandson and my granddaughter have exposure to making sushi. So it's the gift that kept giving. And those 2 hours of quality time spent together were pretty damn priceless to me. And so here I am 9-10 months later, still remembering what a great afternoon that was. So take the time to have those little moments, because those are the moments that really stick. And you know what else really stuck with me? My 80-year-old dad retired as Harley, and he had been riding for as long as I could remember. So for me, that was kind of a melancholy moment, but a moment of gratitude, because wow, what a long career. And my dad was able to say that he rode for decades upon decades without ever dropping his bike. So that stuck with me, and it made me realize that my dad is a mainstay in my life, always has been and always will be. And moments like that, they kind of resonate and they stick. And for Christmas this year, we returned to old traditions, which was lovely. We got to have, the family back together again. The cousins all hung out and had a ball, and we karaoke'd again. And that meant a lot to me. And it made me realize that, family moments were more important and more special than events, if you will. And it reminded me that people you share moments with matter more than the moments themselves. Right? Well, it's time to talk about like curiosity, growth, and expansion and what comes next, because here we are, a brand new year. And I just want to touch on some of the things that have really changed for me in 2025 that I am bringing into 2026 and that I'm happy about. For example, in 2025, I started this podcast. I had always wanted to do so. And here we are, 2026, almost a year later. We launched in February and we're still going strong. And I am still really happy to get on the mic and spend time with you guys every week. And I just am really grateful for the evolution of this podcast, because something tells me that sitting on this mic week after week has partially contributed to some of the shifts in my life and some of the things that have changed. Being accountable to an audience has a tendency to do that to you. You know what else I did in 2025 that I never thought I would do? Mainly because I'm paranoid and let's just face it, getting old. And, at my age, we're kind of getting reluctant to try new things, but I gave in to ChatGPT. Yes, AI is now part of my life. I decided that I was going to embrace the tools that the world has to offer while still protecting, my privacy and being aware of the fact that I am unfortunately entering the demographic that is targeted by all of this craziness out here in the world. But I'm not going to fear that anymore. I'm going to embrace what is offered. I'm going to take the time to learn it. And if it applies and it works in my life, then I'm going to use it. And if it doesn't, then I'm not. But I really did enjoy all of the things I did in 25. BravoCon not being at the top of my list, but nonetheless, something that I'm glad I went to. And of course, I attended that Real Housewives of Beverly Hills filming. That was the fundraiser for the Innocence Center. And that was kind of an important moment to me because it made me realize I was part of something greater than myself. And I'm referring to the Innocence Center, not the Real Housewives when I say that. But look, you guys, I'm not trying to overhaul my life. I'm really not. I think it's come down to the fact that I'm just choosing it more deliberately every single day. And so it leads me to realize that gratitude is in harmony with evolution. The more grateful I became, the more my life naturally evolved into what I wanted it to be. And so I want you to know that I'm grateful for this platform, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to share 2026 with you. And I just want to talk this year about life as it unfolds, the shows I watch, the places I go, and the things I'm learning. And so in closing, when I look back at 2025, honestly, it wasn't a year where everything changed. It was a year where things became clearer. I paid closer attention to what I was putting into my body, my home, my life, my mind, my soul. I chose experiences instead of postponing them, people instead of events, and presence over noise. I'm not trying to fix everything that's broken. I'm just choosing to live a little bit more deliberately. What I eat, what I burn, what I watch, what I carry, and what I let go of. This podcast is no longer just about what I watch or where I go. It's about how I live and inviting you to live alongside me as I figure it out in real time. And if you're listening, I'm really glad you're coming with me. So, Happy New Year. Have a fantastic 2026. And of course, I'll be here. Until next time, living on the verge.